Camila Rodriguez never expected that serving champagne at an elite wedding rehearsal would lead to the most humiliating moment of her life. But when the bride's manicured finger pointed accusingly at her face, and those venomous words cut through the crystal chandeliers and silk-draped tables, she knew her world was about to shatter. What she didn't know was that 24 hours later, a man would step out of a luxury sedan, remove his wedding ring forever, and offer her something that would change everything. The question is, when love strikes in the most unexpected way, do you have the courage to reach for it? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The Grandview estate stood like a monument to wealth and privilege, its marble columns gleaming under the late afternoon sun, as Camila Rodriguez adjusted her crisp white uniform for the third time that day. At 26, she had worked countless high society events, but tonight's wedding rehearsal felt different somehow, charged with an energy that made her stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. The bride, Victoria Sterling, was the daughter of a tech mogul, and her wedding to prominent attorney Julian Cross was being hailed as the social event of the season. Camila smoothed her dark hair back into its regulation bun and checked her reflection in the polished silver serving tray she carried. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, had been particularly strict about presentation today, reminding all staff that this event could lead to more lucrative catering contracts if everything went perfectly. For Camila, who was putting herself through business school while supporting her younger sister Rosa through high school, every event mattered. Every tip, every potential reference, every opportunity to network could be the key to building the restaurant she dreamed of opening someday. The rehearsal dinner was taking place in the estate's grand ballroom, where crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across cream-colored walls adorned with fresh white peonies and trailing ivy. Round tables draped in champagne-colored silk dotted the room, each one set with bone china so delicate it seemed to glow in the ambient lighting. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's elite, politicians rubbing shoulders with celebrities, business magnates laughing with social media influencers who commanded millions of followers. As Camila entered the ballroom carrying a tray of Dom Perignon, she couldn't help but marvel at the opulence surrounding her. The women wore designer gowns that probably cost more than she made in 6 months, their jewelry catching the light like scattered stars. The men looked equally polished in their tailored suits, their conversations peppered with references to yacht trips and private jets. This was a world that existed parallel to hers, close enough to observe, but seemingly impossible to enter. Her eyes found the happy couple at the head table, where Victoria Sterling sat like a queen holding court. The bride-to-be was undeniably beautiful, with platinum blonde hair styled in an elaborate updo and a figure that had clearly benefited from the best personal trainers money could buy. Her engagement ring, a massive emerald-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones, caught the light every time she gestured, which she did frequently and dramatically. Victoria wore a flowing emerald dress that complemented her ring, and her laugh, bright and carrying, dominated the conversations around her. Beside her sat Julian Cross, and Camila found herself pausing involuntarily as she took in his appearance. At 32, he was devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost effortless. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but looked like he could run his fingers through it without disturbing its natural waves. His jawline was sharp enough to cut glass, but his eyes, a warm brown that reminded her of coffee with cream, held a gentleness that contrasted with his imposing physical presence. He wore a navy suit that had clearly been tailored to his athletic frame, and when he smiled, which he did often during conversations, it was the kind of smile that made people lean in closer. But there was something in his expression that gave Camila pause, something that didn't quite match the celebratory atmosphere around him. While Victoria gestured animatedly to their guests, regaling them with stories about their upcoming honeymoon in the Maldives, Julian's attention seemed to drift. His responses were polite and appropriate, but Camila noticed how his fingers drummed against the white tablecloth, how his gaze occasionally wandered to the large windows overlooking the estate's gardens. She shook off her observations and approached their table with professional composure. This was neither the time nor place for her to psychoanalyze the emotional state of a groom, especially one who was marrying into one of the city's most prominent families. Her job was to serve champagne, collect empty glasses, and remain invisible while the elite celebrated their exclusive world. "Good evening," Camilla said softly as she approached Julian's side. "May I refresh your champagne?" Julian looked up at her, and for a moment their eyes met directly. Up close, she could see flecks of gold in his brown irises, and she noticed the faint lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled genuinely and often, though his current expression seemed somewhat strained. "Thank you," he said, his voice deeper than she had expected, with a slight rasp that made her pulse quicken involuntarily. "That's very kind of you." As she poured the golden liquid into his crystal flute, Julian continued speaking, his tone conversational and warm. "This is incredible service, by the way. You and your team have been absolutely flawless tonight. I know these events can be challenging to coordinate, especially with so many, particular personalities in attendance." Camilla couldn't help but smile at his diplomatic phrasing. She had indeed noticed that several guests had very specific demands, from the woman who insisted her champagne be served at exactly 55 degrees, to the man who required his canapés arranged in precise gray, geometric patterns on his plate. "Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. It's our pleasure to make sure everything goes smoothly for your special day." "Julian," he corrected gently. "Please, just Julian. And may I ask your name? I like to know the people who are taking such good care of us." The request surprised her. In her 3 years of catering high-end events, very few clients had bothered to ask her name, let alone insisted she use theirs. Most treated the waitstaff as invisible extensions of the furniture, there to serve but not to be acknowledged as individuals. "Camilla," she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at his genuine interest. "Camilla Rodriguez." "Camilla," Julian repeated, and the way he said her name, with careful attention to each syllable, made something flutter in her stomach. "That's a beautiful name. Are you from the area originally?" The question caught her off guard, partly because of its personal nature, and partly because Julian seemed genuinely interested in her answer. She glanced around quickly, noting that other guests were engaged in their own conversations, and that Victoria was currently holding court with a group of bridesmaids who were hanging on her every word about the wedding dresses. "Intricate beadwork." "I grew up about 20 minutes from here," Camilla answered, setting down the champagne bottle on the table. "Though I've been working in the city for the past few years while I finished school." "What are you studying?" Julian leaned forward slightly, his full attention focused on her in a way that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. It was a magnetic quality, this ability to make someone feel seen and heard, and Camilla found herself understanding how he had probably built his successful legal career. People would trust someone who listened to them with such genuine interest. "Business administration with a focus on hospitality management," she replied, then added with a shy smile, "I'm hoping to open my own restaurant someday. Nothing as grand as this, but something warm and welcoming where people can feel at home." Julian's entire expression brightened, and his smile became more genuine than she had seen it all evening. "That's incredible, Camilla. There's something magical about creating a space where people can come together over good food and feel connected. What kind of cuisine are you thinking?" Before Camilla could answer, a sharp voice cut through their conversation like a blade through silk. "Excuse me, but what exactly is happening here?" Both Camilla and Julian turned to see Victoria Sterling standing beside their table, her emerald dress rustling with the force of her movement. The bride's face, which had been glowing with happiness moments before, was now flushed with anger, her green eyes blazing as she looked between Camilla and her fiancé. The conversations at nearby tables began to quiet as guests sensed the shift in atmosphere, their attention drawn to the unfolding drama. "Victoria," Julian said, rising from his chair with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to diffusing tense situations. "Camilla was just refreshing our champagne. We were having a lovely conversation about her future restaurant plans." Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless, a sound that made Camilla's skin crawl. "Oh, how interesting. And here I thought the help was supposed to serve drinks, not seduce the groom at his own rehearsal dinner." Her voice carried clearly across the room, and Camilla felt every eye in the ballroom turn toward them. The humiliation hit her like a physical blow, heat flooding her cheeks, as whispers began to ripple through the assembled guests. "Victoria, that's completely uncalled for," Julian said firmly, his voice carrying a warning that Camilla had never heard before. Camilla was being professional and courteous. "There's absolutely nothing inappropriate about our conversation." But Victoria was far from finished. She stepped closer to Camilla, her height advantage and stiletto heels making the confrontation feel even more intimidating. "Professional? Is that what we're calling it when the waitstaff throws themselves at taken men? I saw the way you were looking at him, the way you were leaning in, batting your eyelashes like some kind of desperate gold digger." The words hit Camilla like physical blows, each accusation more cutting than the last. She could feel the stares of every guest in the room, could hear the whispered conversations and the soft gasps of shock. Some guests had their phones out, probably already posting about the drama on social media. Her professional reputation, which she had spent years building, was being destroyed in front of an audience of the city's most influential people. "That's enough," Julian said, his voice sharp with authority. "Victoria, you're completely out of line. Camilla has done nothing wrong, and I won't stand here and watch you humiliate someone who has been nothing but professional and kind." Victoria whirled on her fiancé, her fury now directed at him with equal intensity. "Oh, so now you're defending her? This is rich, Julian. At our own rehearsal dinner, you're taking the side of some little waitress over your future wife?" "I'm taking the side of basic human decency," Julian replied, coldly. "Something you seem to have forgotten in your rush to create a scene." The tension in the room was palpable now, guests openly staring at the confrontation unfolding before them. Camilla could see Mrs. Patterson making her way through the crowd, her face pale with horror at the situation that was spiraling completely out of control. This was exactly the kind of incident that could destroy the catering company's reputation and cost Camilla her job. Victoria's voice rose to a pitch that made several guests wince. "You know what? I don't have to stand here and be disrespected at my own party. If you want to flirt with the help, then maybe you should reconsider whether you're ready to be married to someone with actual class and breeding." The insult hung in the air like toxic smoke, and Camilla felt something inside her snap. She had endured the accusations and the humiliation, but the casual cruelty of Victoria's classist remarks pushed her past her limit. "You know what, Mrs. Sterling?" she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of anger running through her body. "You're absolutely right. I shouldn't be here." She set her serving tray down on the nearest table, with deliberate precision, her movements controlled despite the emotional storm raging inside her. "I apologize to everyone for disrupting your evening. That was never my intention." She looked directly at Julian, whose expression was a mixture of anger at his fiancée and something that looked like regret. "Congratulations on your upcoming marriage. I hope you'll both be very happy together." Without waiting for a response, Camilla turned and walked toward the ballroom exit, her head held high despite the whispers and stares that followed her. Each step felt like walking through quicksand, but she refused to run, refused to give Victoria Sterling the satisfaction of seeing her completely break down. Mrs. Patterson intercepted her near the door, her face a mask of professional concern and barely contained panic. "Camilla, wait," the older woman said in a low voice. "Let me handle this. We can smooth things over. Make this go away." "No," Camilla replied firmly. "I won't put you or the company in that position. Send me home. I'll understand if you need to let me go completely. I won't hold it against you." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "Go home and get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow, okay? This isn't your fault, sweetheart. Sometimes these people they forget that we're human beings too." Camilla nodded gratefully and made her way out of the ballroom, through the marble-floored foyer, and into the cool evening air. Only when she was certain she was alone did she allow herself to lean against one of the estate's imposing columns and let the tears fall. The humiliation was crushing, but worse was the knowledge that she had genuinely enjoyed talking with Julian, had felt a connection that she now realized was completely one-sided and inappropriate. She called an Uber and waited in the shadows of the estate's perfectly manicured gardens, watching through the tall windows as the rehearsal dinner continued without her. She could see Julian and Victoria at their table, engaged in what appeared to be a heated but quiet conversation. Several times, Julian looked toward the windows, and Camilla wondered if he was looking for her or simply trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the party. The ride home to her small apartment took 4 to 5 minutes, during which Camilla stared out the window at the city lights and tried to process what had happened. She had worked so hard to build her reputation in the catering industry, had saved every tip, and worked every available shift to pay for school and support Rosa. Now, because of one jealous bride's paranoia, her career could be over before it had really begun. Her phone buzzed with text messages, first from Mrs. Patterson asking if she had made it home safely, then from her coworker Maria, who had witnessed the entire confrontation and wanted to make sure she was okay. Camilla responded briefly to both, then turned off her phone and ran a hot bath, hoping the warm water would wash away some of the evening's humiliation. As she soaked in the tub, Camilla found herself replaying the conversation with Julian, analyzing every word and gesture for signs she might have missed. Had she been flirting without realizing it? Had her genuine interest in his questions about her dreams and ambitions been misinterpreted? The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. Their conversation had felt natural and engaging, but perhaps she had been naive to think that a successful attorney and the heir to a tech fortune would be genuinely interested in the dreams of a waitress putting herself through school. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Camilla's mood perfectly as she sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at her laptop screen. She had 3 assignments due for her business classes this week, but concentration seemed impossible. Every time she tried to focus on financial projections or marketing strategies, her mind drifted back to the previous evening's disaster. Rosa had already left for school, but not before expressing her outrage at the way her older sister had been treated. At 17, Rosa Rodriguez was fierce in her loyalty and had wanted to march straight to the estate and give Victoria Sterling a piece of her mind. Camilla had spent 20 minutes convincing her sister that such action would only make things worse, but Rosa's indignation had been oddly comforting. At least someone believed in her innocence. Around 10 o'clock, as Camilla was finally beginning to make progress on a case study about restaurant management, she heard the distinctive sound of an expensive car engine in the parking lot outside her apartment building. Living in a complex that primarily housed college students and young professionals, luxury vehicles were rare enough to be noteworthy. She glanced out her window absently, then did a double-take that nearly sent her coffee mug tumbling to the floor. A sleek black BMW sedan sat in a parking lot, its chrome details gleaming despite the overcast sky. But it wasn't the car that made her heart stop, it was the man stepping out of the driver's seat. Julian Cross stood beside the vehicle, looking somehow even more handsome in the natural light than he had under the ballroom's chandeliers. He wore dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders, and his hair looked slightly mussed, as if he had been running his fingers through it. What made Camilla's breath catch in her throat, however, was what he wasn't wearing. The gold wedding band that had adorned his left hand the previous evening was nowhere to be seen. She watched in stunned silence as Julian looked around the parking lot, checking apartment numbers, until his gaze landed on her building. He reached into his car and pulled out what appeared to be a small envelope, then began walking toward her door with the confident stride of a man who had made a decision and intended to see it through. Camilla's heart hammered against her ribs as she heard footsteps on the stairs leading to her second-floor apartment. This had to be some kind of mistake. There was no reason for Julian Cross to be at her apartment. No logical explanation for his presence here, except that he had somehow gotten the wrong address. But as the footsteps stopped directly outside her door and a soft knock echoed through her small living space, she realized that whatever was happening was very real and very intentional. She looked down at her outfit, yoga pants and an oversized sweater that had seen better days, and briefly considered changing into something more presentable. But the knocking came again, more insistent this time, and she realized that Julian wasn't going anywhere until she answered the door. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Camilla opened the door to find Julian standing in her hallway, looking somehow both confident and vulnerable. Up close, she could see that he looked tired, as if he hadn't slept well, and there was an intensity in his brown eyes that made her stomach flip. "Julian," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? How did you even find my address? He held up the small envelope she had seen him take from his car. Mrs. Patterson gave it to me. I hope you don't mind that I asked her for it. I know this is probably highly inappropriate, but I needed to see you, to talk to you about last night. Camilla glanced around the hallway, suddenly aware that her neighbors might overhear their conversation. Mrs. Chen, from down the hall, was notorious for her curiosity about the personal lives of everyone in the building, and the walls were thin enough that voices carried easily. You should come in, she said, stepping aside to let him pass. Julian's presence seemed to fill her small apartment, making the space feel even more modest than usual. He looked around briefly, taking in the mismatched furniture she had collected from thrift stores and garage sales, the textbooks stacked on every available surface, the framed photos of her and Rosa that covered one wall. But his expression wasn't judgmental or condescending. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in this glimpse into her life. Can I get you some coffee? Camilla asked, needing something to do with her hands to combat the nervous energy coursing through her body. That would be great. Thank you, Julian replied, settling onto her small couch with an ease that suggested he was comfortable anywhere. I have to say, this feels much more like a real home than the places I'm used to. There's something warm about it. Camilla busied herself in the kitchen, trying to process the surreal situation of having Julian Cross, one of the city's most eligible bachelors, sitting in her apartment drinking coffee from a mug she had bought at a campus bookstore. Julian, she said as she handed him the steaming mug, I need to apologize for last night. I never meant to cause any problems between you and Victoria. I was just doing my job. But I can see how it might have looked inappropriate. Julian set his coffee down on her small table and looked at her with an expression so intense it made her pulse quicken. Camilla, you have absolutely nothing to apologize for. Nothing at all. If anyone should be apologizing, it's me, for not standing up to Victoria more firmly and for letting you be humiliated like that. But she's your fiancée, Camilla protested. She was probably just stressed about the wedding, worried about everything being perfect. Brides can be sensitive about these things. Julian's laugh was bitter and hollow. Fiancé. About that. He held up his left hand, and Camilla's eyes were drawn to his bare ring finger. I gave the ring back this morning. The words hit Camilla like a physical blow, leaving her speechless and struggling to understand what he was telling her. You… what? Julian, you can't be serious. You're getting married tomorrow. The whole thing is planned. All those people are expecting, your families, the press coverage. All of that is exactly the problem, Julian said, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that Camilla was beginning to recognize as a sign of his agitation. Camilla, I've been having doubts about this marriage for months, but I kept pushing them aside, telling myself it was just pre-wedding nerves. Last night, watching Victoria attack you so cruelly, seeing the way she treated another human being just because she felt threatened, it crystallized everything I had been trying to ignore. He stood up and began pacing the small confines of her living room, his movements reflecting the intensity of his emotions. The woman I'm supposed to marry in 24 hours showed me exactly who she is when she thinks no one important is watching. She's cruel. She's classist, and she cares more about appearances and social status than she does about kindness or decency or any of the values I thought we shared. Camilla sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Julian was telling her. But Julian, you can't call off a wedding because of one incident. Maybe she was just having a bad night. Maybe the stress got to her. It wasn't just one incident, Julian said firmly. It was the culmination of hundreds of small moments that I chose to overlook because it was easier than facing the truth. The way she talks about service workers, the way she treats people she considers beneath her, the way she dismissed your dreams and ambitions as if they were worthless just because you don't have a trust fund. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her, his brown eyes blazing with an emotion that made her breath catch. But more than that, Camilla, talking to you last night reminded me what it feels like to connect with someone genuinely. When you told me about your restaurant dreams, your eyes lit up in a way that was so real, so passionate, so different from the calculated social interactions I'm used to. You reminded me what authentic conversation feels like. what it means to be interested in someone as a person, rather than as a networking opportunity or a status symbol. Camilla felt tears pricking at her eyes, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice and the impossible situation they found themselves in. "Julian, I'm flattered, truly. But you can't blow up your entire life because you enjoyed talking to me. You barely know me. We had one conversation." "You're right," Julian said, moving closer to where she sat. "I don't know your favorite color, or what you like to do on Sunday mornings, or whether you prefer mountains or beaches. But I know that you work 3 jobs to put yourself through school while supporting your sister. I know that you dream of creating a place where people feel welcomed and cared for. I know that you carry yourself with dignity even when someone is trying to tear you down. I know that you have more class and grace in your little finger than most of the people in my social circle combined." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small envelope Camilla had seen him carrying earlier. "I wrote you a letter last night after I got home from the rehearsal dinner. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened and what it meant. I want you to read it, but first, I need to ask you something." Camilla's hands trembled as she took the envelope from him, the paper feeling impossibly heavy with the weight of whatever words it contained. "What do you want to ask me?" Julian took a deep breath, and she could see the vulnerability in his expression, the courage it was taking for him to put himself in such an exposed position. "I want to ask if you would consider giving us, a chance. Not because I'm running away from Victoria, though I absolutely am, but because I think there might be something real between us, something worth exploring." "Sol." He knelt down beside her chair, bringing their faces to the same level, and Camilla could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that suited him perfectly. "I know this is insane. I know I'm asking you to take a leap of faith with someone who just called off his wedding. I know I have a lot of baggage and complications that come with my family and my career. But Camilla, I also know that I haven't felt this interested in getting to know someone, this excited about the possibility of building something real, in years." Camilla's hand shook as she opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of expensive stationery inside. Julian's handwriting was strong and decisive, the words flowing across the page in dark blue ink. "Camilla," the letter began, "I was marrying the wrong woman. You reminded me what real looks like. Not the manufactured perfection of my social circle, not the calculated charm of networking events, the genuine warmth and authenticity and grace under pressure. You reminded me that connection doesn't come from shared stock portfolios or mutual social contacts, but from recognizing something true in another person. I don't know if you feel any of what I felt during our conversation last night, but I had to try to find out. You deserve to know that one conversation with you was worth more than 3 years of small talk with someone who was supposed to be my life partner. If you're willing to take a chance on someone who finally figured out what he was looking for when he met you, then I'd like to take you to dinner and ask you all the questions I should have asked last night. What do you say?" Camilla read the letter twice, then looked up to find Julian watching her with an expression of hopeful anxiety that made her heart ache. This was impossible, completely insane. The kind of romantic gesture that happened in movies but not in real life. Men like Julian Cross didn't throw away advantageous marriages for Donna. Waitresses, they had met once. Fairy tales didn't happen to girls who lived in studio apartments and worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. "Julian," she said softly, "this is the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone has ever done for me. But I have to ask, how do I know this isn't just some kind of rebellion against your family's expectations? How do I know that once the excitement of defying everyone wears off, you will realize you made a mistake?" Julian reached for her hands, enclosing them in his larger, warmer ones. "You don't know that. I can't guarantee that this will work out, that we're compatible long term, that we won't discover deal breakers about each other. What I can tell you is that I've never felt more certain about a decision in my life. Walking away from Victoria isn't about rebellion. It's about refusing to settle for a life that would slowly kill everything authentic in me." He paused, searching for the right words to express the depth of his conviction. "Camilla, I've spent the last 5 years of my life going through the motions, checking boxes, following a script that was written for me by other people. Successful career? Check. Socially appropriate girlfriend? Check. Engagement to someone from the right family? Check. Big wedding that will look perfect in the society pages? Check. But none of it felt real. None of it felt like it was actually my life. And talking to me for 10 minutes changed all that? Camilla asked, not sarcastically but with genuine wonder at the magnitude of what he was claiming. Yes, Julian said simply. It reminded me that I'm capable of genuine connection, that there are people in the world who are interested in ideas and dreams and authenticity rather than just social positioning. It reminded me that I don't have to settle for a life that looks good on paper but feels hollow in reality. Camilla pulled her hands free and stood up, needing space to think clearly. This was the kind of decision that could change the entire trajectory of her life, and she couldn't afford to make it based on emotion alone. Julian, even if I said yes, even if we tried this, the practical issues are enormous. Your family, your social circle, your career, they all depend on a certain image. I'm not part of that world, and I'm not sure I want to be. I understand that, Julian said, rising to face her. And I'm not asking you to change or to try to fit into a world that has already shown you how cruel it can be. I'm asking if you'd be willing to let me try to find my way into yours, or maybe we could build something new together that doesn't require either of us to pretend to be someone we're not. The sincerity in his voice was devastating, and Camilla found herself wanting desperately to believe that this could work, that love could really conquer the practical realities of their different backgrounds and circumstances. What about your law practice? Your family's connections? Won't this hurt your career? Julian's smile was rueful but determined. My career is built on my reputation for integrity and fighting for what I believe in. If I can't apply those same principles to my personal life, then what kind of man am I? As for my family, they'll be furious for a while, but they'll come around eventually. They love me, even if they don't always understand my choices. And Victoria? The wedding is supposed to be tomorrow. The scandal, the media attention, the social fallout. Let me worry about all of that, Julian said firmly. Victoria will be fine. She's angry and humiliated right now, but honestly, I think she's more upset about the social embarrassment than she is about losing me. She'll find someone else to marry, probably someone more suitable to her temperament and ambitions. As for the media, scandal dies down eventually, but regret lasts forever. Camilla walked to her window and looked out at the parking lot where Julian's BMW sat among the aging Hondas and Toyotas that belonged to her neighbors. The contrast was stark, a visual representation of the gulf between their worlds. But then she thought about their conversation the previous evening, about how natural and easy it had felt to talk with him, about the way he had listened to her, dreams as if they mattered. I need you to understand something, she said, turning back to face him. I'm not looking for someone to rescue me or to solve my problems. I'm building my own life, creating my own future. If we did this, if we tried to make something work between us, it would have to be as equals, as partners. I won't be anyone's charity case or social project. Julian's expression brightened with something that looked like profound relief. Camilla, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to rescue you. I want to know you. I want to understand what drives you, what makes you laugh, what your dreams look like when you're not serving champagne to people who treat you as invisible. I want to be part of a relationship where both people are building something together, rather than just maintaining appearances. And if your world rejects me, if your friends and family make it clear that I'm not welcome, then we'll build our own world, Julian said without hesitation. Look, I won't lie to you. There will be people who disapprove, who will say cruel things, who will try to make you feel like you don't belong. But there will also be people who see what I see in you, who recognize your strength and intelligence and grace. And honestly, the people who can't see those things are people I don't particularly want in my life anyway. Camilla felt tears threatening again, but this time they were born of hope rather than humiliation. She thought about Rosa, who would be home from school in a few hours and would probably faint when she heard about this development. She thought about her dreams of opening a restaurant, about how Julian's connections and business experience could help her navigate that world more effectively. She thought about the loneliness she had felt for months, working so hard toward her goals that she had forgotten to make space for romance or companionship. This is insane, she said finally, a smile beginning to tug at the corners of her mouth. Completely insane, Julian agreed, moving closer to her. The most impulsive, irrational, potentially disastrous decision I've ever made. And I've never been more certain of anything in my life. What if we're terrible together? What if we have nothing in common once we get past the initial attraction? Then we'll figure that out together, and we'll handle it like adults. But, Camilla, I have a feeling we're going to surprise ourselves with how much we do have in common. Ambition, integrity, the desire to build something meaningful, the belief that kindness matters more than status. Those seem like pretty solid foundations to build on. Camilla took a deep breath, feeling as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into unknown waters. Every practical consideration told her this was a mistake, that the gulf between their worlds was too wide to bridge, that fairy tale romances didn't happen to girls like her. But looking into Julian's eyes, seeing the hope and vulnerability there, feeling the electric connection that had sparked between them from their first conversation, she realized that some risks were worth taking. "Okay," she said quietly, then louder, with more conviction. "Okay. Let's try this. Let's see what happens when two people from completely different worlds decide to build something new together." Julian's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face and making him look younger and more carefree than she had seen him look since they met. Before she could process what was happening, he closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing gently across her cheekbones. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you for being brave enough to take this leap with me." And then he kissed her, and Camilla understood for the first time what it meant to feel completely present in a moment. To have the entire world narrow down to the warmth of someone's lips against hers and the gentle strength of hands that held her as if she were something precious. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a demand. But when she responded by rising on her toes and threading her fingers through his hair, it deepened into something that felt like a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder than the simple kiss warranted, Julian rested his forehead against hers and smiled. "I should probably mention that I've never done anything like this before. Called off a wedding, showed up at someone's apartment with a love letter, kissed someone I barely know but can't stop thinking about." "Well," Camilla said, her voice slightly breathless, "I've never had someone call off their wedding for me, so I think we're both in uncharted territory here." They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, both seeming to realize the magnitude of what they had just committed to. Then Julian's phone began buzzing insistently in his pocket, and the spell was broken as reality intruded on their perfect moment. Julian glanced at the screen and sighed. "Victoria, she's been calling all morning. I should probably answer this and start dealing with the fallout." "Do you want privacy?" Camilla asked, but Julian shook his head. "No, I want you to hear this. If we're going to do this together, then I want to be completely transparent with you about what we're walking into." He answered the call, putting it on speaker so Camilla could hear Victoria's voice, shrill with fury and disbelief. "Julian Cross, you absolute bastard. Where the hell are you? Do you have any idea what you've done? The flowers are being delivered, the cake is already at the venue, 300 people are expecting to watch us get married tomorrow, and you disappear with some pathetic note about needing space to think?" "Victoria," Julian said calmly, "I tried to explain this morning when I returned the ring. This isn't about needing space, it's about recognizing that we're not right for each other." "Not right for each other?" "Julian, we've been together for 3 years. We have a life planned out, a future mapped, contracts signed with vendors. You can't just decide overnight that we're not compatible." "That's exactly the problem," Julian replied, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "We have contracts and plans and social expectations, but we don't have love, we don't have connection, we don't even particularly like each other when we're not performing for other people." There was a pause, and when Victoria spoke again, her voice was dangerously quiet. "This is about that little waitress, isn't it? That pathetic girl who was throwing herself at you last night. Julian, please tell me you're not destroying our future over some gold digging nobody who saw opportunity and took it." Camilla felt the familiar sting of Victoria's words, but this time, Julian's immediate response softened the blow. "Victoria, Stop. Camilla has more integrity in class than anyone at that rehearsal dinner last night, including us. This isn't about her specifically. It's about recognizing what real connection looks like when you've been settling for a pale imitation for years. Real connection? Victoria's laugh was bitter and sharp. Julian, she's a waitress. She probably didn't finish high school. What could you possibly have in common with someone like that? She's getting her business degree while working 3 jobs to support herself and her sister. Julian said firmly. She has dreams and ambitions and the courage to pursue them despite obstacles that would have stopped most people. She's kind and genuine and interested in building something meaningful with her life. So to answer your question, we have everything important in common. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for so long that Camilla wondered if Victoria had hung up. Finally, her voice came through, cold and calculating. Fine. You want to throw your life away on some little nobody, that's your choice. But don't expect me to make this easy for you. My father has connections everywhere in this city. Your law practice, your reputation, social standing, all of it can disappear faster than you think. And as for your little girlfriend, well, let's just say that someone in her position should be very careful about making enemies of people who have the power to destroy her future. The threat was clear and chilling, and Camilla felt a cold fear settle in her stomach. She had been so caught up in the romance and possibility of the situation that she hadn't fully considered the practical realities of what opposing someone like Victoria Sterling could mean for her future. But Julian's response was immediate and fierce. Victoria, if you or your father do anything to hurt Camilla's career or opportunities, I will make it my personal mission to ensure that everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of people you really are. I have just as many connections as you do, and a reputation for integrity that carries weight. Don't test me on this. We'll see about that, Victoria said, and the line went dead. Julian set his phone down and looked at Camilla with an expression of concern and determination. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Victoria's always been vindictive when she doesn't get her way, but she's mostly bluster. Her father's connections are real, but so are mine, and I won't let them hurt you. Camilla sank back into her chair, the reality of their situation settling over her like a heavy blanket. Julian, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe we're being naive about what we're up against. Victoria's family has the kind of money and influence that can really damage someone's career, and I can't afford to lose the progress I've made. Hey, Julian said, kneeling beside her chair again and taking her hands in his. Look at me. I understand that you're scared. I'm scared too. But Camilla, I promise you, I will not let Victoria or anyone else hurt you because of this decision. I have resources, I have connections, and I have a very successful legal practice built on protecting people from exactly this kind of intimidation. End quote. But what if it's not enough? What if she really can destroy my career before it even gets started? Julian, I have Rosa to think about. She's counting on me to get through school so I can help her with college. I can't risk her future for a relationship that might not even work out. Julian was quiet for a moment, and Camilla could see him processing the weight of her concerns. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful and measured. You're right to be concerned about Rosa. Family comes first, always. But Camilla, what if instead of seeing this as a risk to your future, we looked at it as an opportunity to build something even better than what you had planned? What do you mean? I mean that my connections and resources could help you achieve your restaurant dream faster and more successfully than going it alone. I know investors. I know real estate developers. I know marketing experts who could help you build something incredible. And more than that, you'd have a partner who believes in your vision and wants to support it. Camilla felt a flicker of hope, but also a deep wariness. Julian, I appreciate the offer, but I need to know that you see me as an equal partner. Not as someone you're helping out of charity or guilt. If we do this, if we build something together, it has to be because you respect my abilities and judgment, not because you feel sorry for me. Camilla, Julian said, his voice intense with sincerity. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm in awe of you. Do you have any idea how impressive it is that you're putting yourself through business school while working 3 jobs and supporting your sister? Do you understand how rare it is to find someone who has clear goals and the determination to achieve them, despite obstacles? I don't want to help you because I pity you. I want to be part of your team because I recognize your strength and ability. Before Camilla could respond, her apartment door burst open and Rosa Rodriguez stormed in, her dark hair flying and her school backpack still slung over her shoulder. At 17, Rosa was all sharp angles and fierce energy, with the kind of protective instincts that made her a formidable ally and a dangerous enemy. Camilla, I just heard from Maria, whose cousin works at the estate, that some rich bitch humiliated you last night and… Rosa stopped mid-sentence as she took in the scene before her, Julian kneeling beside her sister's chair, the obvious intimacy of their conversation, the tear tracks on Camilla's cheeks. Oh, hi. Rosa, Camilla said, wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself. This is Julian Cross. Julian, this is my sister Rosa. Julian stood and extended his hand to Rosa with the same courteous attention he had shown Camilla the night before. It's a pleasure to meet you, Rosa. Camilla talks about you constantly. She's incredibly proud of you. Rosa shook his hand warily, her dark eyes taking in every detail of his appearance and obvious wealth. You're the groom from last night. The one who was supposed to get married tomorrow to the witch who attacked my sister. Was supposed to being the operative phrase, Julian said calmly. I called off the wedding this morning. Rosa's eyebrows shot up, and she looked between Julian and Camilla with growing understanding. Wait, you called off your wedding because of Camilla? Because of one conversation at a rehearsal dinner? Among other reasons, yes, Julian replied honestly. Your sister reminded me what genuine connection feels like, and what it means to have integrity in your personal life. Rosa studied him for a long moment, then turned to Camilla. And you're okay with this? With him blowing up his life for you, after knowing you for like 12 hours? I'm terrified, Camilla admitted. But Rosa, I've never felt anything like what I felt talking to Julian last night. And I've never had anyone be willing to sacrifice something important to be with me. Rosa said, settling onto the couch and fixing Julian with a stare that would have made seasoned attorneys uncomfortable. So, let me get this straight. You're rich, successful, probably have women throwing themselves at you constantly. But you're here, in our tiny apartment, asking my sister to take a chance on you after you just humiliated your fiancé and probably created the scandal of the social season. That's an accurate summary, yes, Julian said, seemingly unbothered by Rosa's directness. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When your family pressures you to come back to your real life? When you realize that dating someone from our world means giving up things you're used to having? Julian considered the question seriously before answering. Rosa, I understand your skepticism, and I respect you for protecting your sister. Those are all valid concerns, and I can't prove to you that I won't change my mind, or get scared, or decide this was all a mistake. What I can tell you is that I've spent the last 3 years in a relationship that looked perfect on paper, but felt hollow in reality. And 12 hours with your sister has felt more real and meaningful than anything I've experienced in years. But you barely know her, Rosa pressed. You don't know that she sings off-key in the shower, or that she stress cleans when she's worried about exams, or that she cries during commercials with dogs in them. You're making this huge gesture based on one conversation and some kind of romantic fantasy. You're absolutely right, Julian said, and his agreement seemed to surprise Rosa. I don't know those things about her yet, but I want to learn them. I want to know everything about who she is, what makes her happy, what scares her, what she dreams about when she thinks no one is listening. That's the point of dating someone, isn't it? To discover who they really are beyond the first impression. Rosa was quiet for a moment, and Camilla could see her processing Julian's words. Finally, she turned to her sister. Camilla, what does your gut tell you? Forget about the money and the drama and the complications. When you look at him, when you think about the possibility of building something with him, what do you feel? Camilla looked at Julian, taking in his patient expression as he waited for her answer, the way he had handled Rosa's interrogation with grace and honesty, the memory of how natural their conversation had felt the night before. I feel like I want to try, she said softly. I feel like this could be something special if we're both brave enough to see where it leads. Rosa nodded slowly. Okay then. But, she pointed a finger at Julian. If you hurt her, if you decide this was all some kind of midlife crisis and you want to go back to your old life, I will make your existence very unpleasant. I may be 17 and I may not have connections or money, but I am very creative when it comes to revenge. Julian's smile was genuine and warm. Noted and understood. I wouldn't expect anything less from someone who loves Camilla as much as you obviously do. Good, Rosa said, then grinned at her sister. So, does this mean you're going to be dating a rich guy? Because I have some thoughts about how you could use his connections to fast-track your restaurant plans. Both Camilla and Julian laughed, and the tension in the room seemed to ease slightly. Rosa, Camilla said, I love you, but maybe let us figure out the basics of dating before we start planning business ventures. Fair enough, Rosa said, then looked at Julian again. But seriously, what's the plan here? You've called off your wedding, you're sitting in our apartment declaring your feelings, but what happens next? Where do you go from here? It was a practical question that cut to the heart of their situation, and Julian ran his hand through his hair as he considered his answer. Honestly, I'm making this up as I go along. I've never been in a situation like this before. But I think the first step is probably dealing with the immediate fallout from the wedding cancellation, making sure Camilla doesn't face any professional retaliation from Victoria, and then, if she's willing, taking her on a proper first date where we can talk without the weight of dramatic gestures and life-changing decisions. That sounds reasonable, Camilla said, feeling some of her anxiety ease at the practical approach. Though I have to ask, what exactly does dealing with the wedding fallout involve? Julian's expression grew serious. Well, there are vendors to notify, guests to inform, deposits to forfeit, and a very expensive venue that's going to be decorated for a wedding that isn't happening. My family is going to be furious, Victoria's family is going to be vengeful, and the social gossip is going to be brutal for a while. That sounds awful, Camilla said, guilt beginning to creep in at the chaos they had unleashed. It's going to be unpleasant, Julian agreed, but it's also going to be honest. I should have had the courage to call this off months ago, when I first started having doubts. The fact that it took meeting you to give me the push I needed doesn't make the decision wrong. It just makes me wish I had been braver sooner. Rosa, who had been listening to this exchange with growing interest, suddenly sat up straighter. Wait, did you say there's going to be a decorated venue with no wedding tomorrow? Like, flowers and cake and everything? Rosa, Camilla said warningly, recognizing the scheming expression on her sister's face. What? I'm just thinking, it seems like a waste to let all that beautiful stuff go unused. And weren't you saying last week that you needed to plan some kind of networking event for your business class project? Julian looked between the sisters with growing amusement. Are you suggesting that we turn my canceled wedding into a networking event? I'm suggesting that you're about to waste a lot of money on decorations and catering, and Camilla needs to make connections in the hospitality industry, Rosa said pragmatically. It seems like a win-win situation. To me. Rosa, that's insane, Camilla protested. We can't just take over someone else's wedding venue. Why not? Julian asked, and both sisters turned to stare at him. I mean, the venue is paid for, the flowers are ordered, the catering is arranged. If the goal is to minimize waste and maximize the educational opportunity for you, it actually makes a lot of sense. Julian, you can't be serious, Camilla said. The optics alone would be terrible. People would think I was some kind of predatory social climber who manipulated you into leaving Victoria so I could take over her wedding. People are going to think whatever they want to think regardless of what we actually do, Julian pointed out. At least this way, we turn a potentially devastating social scandal into something positive, productive. Plus, it would give you a chance to see how high-end event management works, to make connections with vendors and suppliers, and to demonstrate your abilities to people who could help your career. Camilla felt a familiar flutter of excitement as she considered the possibilities, but her practical nature quickly reasserted itself. Julian, even if we could somehow make this work logistically, the guest list for your wedding consists entirely of people from your social circle. They're not going to want to network with a waitress who's putting herself through community college. You'd be surprised, Julian said thoughtfully. A lot of those people are involved in the restaurant and hospitality industries. Hotel chains, catering companies, event planning businesses. And honestly, the story of a young entrepreneur who's building her future through hard work and determination would be appealing to a lot of them, especially if it's presented correctly. Rosa was practically bouncing with enthusiasm now. Camilla, think about it. How many years would it normally take you to get FaceTime with the kind of people who will be at that venue tomorrow? This could accelerate your timeline by months or even years. But what about Victoria? Camilla asked. Won't she be there? Won't this look like I'm deliberately trying to humiliate her? Julian shook his head. Victoria won't be there. She's going to her family's house in the Hamptons to avoid the social embarrassment. Most of the bridal party will probably skip it too out of loyalty to her. But the broader social circle, the business contacts, the people who were really coming for the networking opportunities anyway, a lot of them will probably still show up out of curiosity if nothing else. This is completely crazy, Camilla said, but she could hear the consideration in her own voice. Completely crazy, Julian agreed, but also potentially brilliant. Camilla, what do you have to lose? If it doesn't work? If people react badly? If the whole thing is a disaster? Then we learn from it and move on. But if it works, if you make even a few good connections, if you get some people interested in your restaurant concept, then it could change the trajectory of your entire career. Camilla looked around her small apartment, taking in the textbooks stacked everywhere, the photos of her and Rosa. The dreams board she had created, with pictures of restaurants and business plans tacked to the wall. She thought about the humiliation of the previous night, about Victoria's threats, about the long road ahead of her if she continued on her current path. Then she thought about the possibility of fast-tracking her dreams, of turning a scandalous situation into an opportunity, of proving that she belonged in the world she was trying to enter. Okay, she said finally, and both Julian and Rosa looked at her with surprise. Okay, let's do it. Let's turn your canceled wedding into the most unconventional networking event in the city's history. Julian's smile was radiant. Really? You're sure? I'm terrified and excited and convinced this is either the best or worst decision I've ever made, Camilla said honestly. But yes, I'm sure. If we're going to do this, if we're going to build something together, then let's start by showing everyone that we're not afraid to take risks and think outside the box. Rosa let out a whoop of excitement and launched herself at her sister, wrapping her in a fierce hug. This is going to be amazing, Camilla. You're going to show all those stuffy rich people what real vision and determination look like. All right, Julian said, pulling out his phone with the efficient energy of someone accustomed to managing complex situations. If we're really doing this, then we need to move fast. The venue expects us tomorrow at 2 o'clock, which gives us about 28 hours to completely reconceptualize this event. What exactly needs to be done? Camilla asked, her business management training kicking in, as she began to consider the logistical challenges they were facing. Well, first we need to contact the vendors and explain the situation. The florist, the caterer, the musicians, the photographer. Some of them might want to back out when they realize it's not actually a wedding anymore. Then we need to reach out to the guest list and let them know about the change in format. And we need to create some kind of presentation or materials that introduce you and your restaurant concept to the attendees. I can help with the presentation, Rosa offered. I'm really good with graphic design and social media stuff. We could create like a whole brand package for Camilla's restaurant idea. That would be incredible, Camilla said, feeling a surge of gratitude for her sister's unwavering support. But Rosa, are you sure you want to get involved in this? If it goes badly, if there's backlash, you could get caught up in it too. Rosa's expression was fierce and determined. Camilla, you've been taking care of me and supporting my dreams for years. Now it's my turn to support yours. Besides, this is going to be the most interesting thing that's happened in this boring city in years. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Julian was already scrolling through his contacts, his legal training evident in the methodical way he was approaching the problem. I'll start with the venue coordinator and work my way through the vendor list. The key is going to be framing this correctly, positioning it as an innovative networking event rather than a scandal or a publicity stunt. "What should I do?" Camilla asked, feeling both excited and overwhelmed by the scope of what they were attempting. "You should start thinking about how you want to present your restaurant concept," Julian said. "What's your vision? What makes your approach unique? What kind of experience do you want to create for people? Tomorrow is going to be your chance to pitch your dream to some of the most influential people in the hospitality industry." Camilla felt a familiar thrill at the thought of finally being able to share her vision with people who have the power to help make it reality. "I've been working on a business plan for months. It's for a restaurant that combines high-quality, locally sourced food with the warmth and community feeling of a family kitchen. Sophisticated but not pretentious, elegant but welcoming." "That sounds perfect," Julian said warmly. "Exactly the kind of concept that would appeal to people who are tired of stuffy, exclusionary fine dining experiences." "Okay," Camilla said, taking a deep breath and feeling her natural determination beginning to overcome her fear. "Let's do this. Let's show everyone what happens when you combine vision with courage and maybe just a little bit of beautiful insanity." And as Julian began making phone calls to vendors, as Rosa started sketching logo ideas on her school notebooks, as Camilla pulled out her carefully crafted business plan and began to envision presenting it to a room full of potential investors and partners, she realized that sometimes the most important moments in life came disguised as disasters, and sometimes the biggest risks led to the most extraordinary rewards. The next 24 hours would determine whether they were brilliant visionaries or complete fools, but either way, they would face it together, and that felt like the most important victory of all.